Yeah, so good evening, everybody. My name is Major General Retired Bryan Watson, your president of the Army Engineer Association, and I want to welcome you to another Engineer Rally Point. As I've thought about, my own career, I, I think that the most important decisions that we make as leaders is how we're going to train the next generation, how we're going to train and ensure that people can think, that those that we lead can think their way through war, because we have a 100% chance that we're going to get the place of war wrong, the characterization of war wrong, the adversary wrong. And so the thing that we have to do the most, I think the most important thing we do is preparing people for a conflict, is thinking about how we train them in the fundamentals. And so that really is what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to look at what are some of the changes that are coming in both the captain's career course and BOLC, how we are setting the table, how the Engineer Brigade, First Engineer Brigade is setting the table so that we have a more realistic environment. I think this is very important, whether you're a captain, whether you're a colonel, because you have to know what's going on at our schoolhouse. They are, in many cases, responding to things that demands that you are putting on the system. And so I think this is an extremely important topic tonight. Before we start off with Major Luke Clayton and talking about the BOLC, my commandant, I'd offer you to make any opening comments that you would like to make, sir.
Hey, General Watson, thank you for that opening, and thank you again for hosting these events. As our professional association for our group here, I see people trickling in, so they will continue to trickle in as we talk here. Yep. So our courses here at Fort Leonard Wood are alive, right? They are changing. They're changing as we speak, and there's a change management process for how us in TRADOC adapt our programs of instruction for our students. And we're right in the middle of it, folks. We've done it recently with both our BOLC course, ECCC, several MOSs, and as well as Sapper School too, have all taken place in the last 6 months, these formal reviews as we make sure all of our courses and the students that we produce are ready for LSCO, large-scale combat operations. And so that's what we're focused on here at Engineer School, and delivering quality education so that our product, our soldiers, our warrant officers, our NCOs, and our officers meet the need there in the field. So tonight, and that's informed by what's going on in the world, in Gaza, Lebanon, and especially in Ukraine. Now, a fact that many are aware of is that we have our premier lieutenant and captain course are led by our Aussie and Brit officers. I don't know when that started, sir. Perhaps before your time as commandant here. But we have two all-stars here from Australia and from the UK, Major Luke Clayton and Major Peter Witcomb, that their nations send their very best here to help forge our young minds. So with that, sir, back to you.
Okay, and thanks, Steve. This doesn't happen by happenstance, and so on your watch, you've been able to really move the change down the field. So thanks for that. Okay, so Major Clayton, Luke Clayton, sir, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you very much, sirs. Just a quick thumbs up that you've got me on comms. That's fantastic. So thank you again, and good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, Major Luke Clayton, I'm the Chief Instructor of the Engineer Basic Officer Leaders course in BOLC here at Fort Leonard Wood. And it's a great honor to be able to talk to you all tonight and update you on the changes we're making to BOLC and the course schedule going forwards into financial year 2026. So I think firstly, what I'll do is give you a quick overview of what I'm going to cover over the next 10 to 12 minutes, and then I'll dive into the presentation. So for some context, here on a BOLC, we take new newly commissioned second lieutenants from across compos 1, 2, and 3, so the active duty element, National Guard and Reserve, and over a 19-week and 4-day period aim to achieve our mission statement, which is to develop competent and confident, adaptable engineer officers grounded in warrior tasks and able to lead soldiers in the contemporary operational environment. Now, this course is built around something called a critical task list, which is decided by a board of officers that normally sits every 2 to 3 years, called a critical task site selection board. The officers on that board are chaired by a lieutenant colonel and include several majors from across active duty National Guard and Reserve Army units. And they review the current critical task lists and update them based upon the understanding of what they need lieutenants to be able to do when turning up as platoon leaders post this course. Now, the last time the CTSSB sat before January of this year was back in 2019. Due to COVID and a number of other factors, there's been a 6-year gap since that last board sat. And I think if we cast our minds back to then, the world was a vastly different place. We were all still in Afghanistan. We were operating against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And I think the biggest threat to the UK, my home at the time, was quite frankly Brexit. So I don't know what it was for the US. But if we fast forward to 2025 and the wars in Ukraine, Gaza, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the growing threat of conventional war in the Far East has definitely changed that dynamic. And the shift in military focus away from sustained counterinsurgency operations to large-scale combat operations has been rapid. And quite frankly, it requires an adjustment in our critical task list and our approach to training. So these changes aren't just about updating the curriculum, they're about fundamentally changing how we develop our engineer leaders. We're striving to create lieutenants who are not just technically proficient, but also adaptable, innovative, and capable of thriving in those complex environments. So the slide you should be seeing in front of you now is the current course as it stands at the present moment in time on the 3rd of April 25. And that's broadly broken down into 3 key blocks. So Common Core, that covers the first 5 weeks and essentially refreshes the officers on lessons learned from their commissioning source on BOLC A. It covers foundational training and covers in-processing, doctrinal refreshers, ethics, platoon leaderships, the critical information that will enable them to succeed on course and in their future postings. They complete basic rifle marksmanship, land navigation, and FTX1, which is based around basic infantry skills and drills, developing their teamwork and setting a standard for FTX2. They then move into the second block of instruction, so combat engineering, which takes a modular structure of instruction, and each week covers a new topic where they learn and are tested in a series of summative examinations. That leads into FTX2, where they apply what they've learned in a field environment. They then move into 5 weeks of general engineering, again taught in a block-by-block instruction, project management, horizontal and vertical engineering, completing summative assessments on a weekly basis before completing a capstone event for that general engineering topic. And then they complete their out processing and graduate in the final 2 weeks. And I think, as you can see there's an opportunity not only to adapt the course to match the current threat and future threats, but also rethink our academic approach by reviewing our teaching methods. So looking at how students learn, we wanted to wed the course to a spiral learning methodology. So spiral learning isn't just about repeating information. It's looking at revisiting topics in new contexts, forcing students to actively reconstruct their understanding. And each time the students are challenged to apply that foundational knowledge in a slightly more complex and nuanced way. So what we are doing here is responding to the realities of modern warfare, prioritizing the application of knowledge over a learn, test, dump method that may be occurring on the previous iterations of the course. And the core message is we're not just teaching our lieutenants what to do, we're teaching them how to think like engineer leaders in complex and rapidly changing environments. So if we move on to the next slide now, if possible, you can see how this. Yep, sir, go for it.
Just for the group, fantastic lead on, but for the group, if you have questions, you can either put them in chat. I'll kind of try and monitor that. And if it's appropriate and Luke's got some time, we'll field the question right then and there. Otherwise, there'll be time for Q&A. Luke, sorry to interrupt.
No problem, sir. Thank you. So yeah, that next slide that you should be able to see now, you can see how the process is beginning to be realized, and as we move into the first stage of its evolution. And to be clear, we're following the ADDI process of training design. So that's analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. So a 5-step process. And we're very much still in the analysis phase of this process. Major Peter Witcomb will speak more on this in his presentation, so I won't steal your sandwiches. But we're currently going through all of the critical tasks, analysing them to ensure we're linking them to doctrine, that they're correctly formatted and married together in a course schedule that also implements our vision of spiral learning, which gives us an overall outcome of developing lieutenants who are more lethal, better able to apply their knowledge or the knowledge that we impart to them, can link that to what they see in the real world, which creates the why and the relevance to what they are learning, and then ensuring they are more adaptable and able to critically outthink the enemy in large-scale combat operations. So if we flick to the last slide that I'm going to cover, you should be able to get a glimpse into the proposed new course structure for financial year 2026. So there are some areas we have limited control over, such as things like in-processing and out-processing and elements of Common Core. However, we've minimized these as best as possible and split some of the subjects up so that they do not receive all the information in an initial block right at the start, but instead get the core pieces of essential information they need to enable them to progress on course, but then also revisit some of those key concepts at the end to ensure it's fresh in their mind before they jump into real-world platoon leadership. We've also integrated crossover engagement towards the end of the course with our NCO courses here, ALC and SLC, as well as our Engineer Captain's Career course to enable lieutenants to interact with soldiers and officers and that have that experience of the real army to share knowledge and wisdom. So then the next block there, you can see Platoon Leader Foundations. This covers many of the lessons learned from BOLC A that we have to recover, but it sets them up for success through the course by providing a baseline of understanding and behaviours that officers are expected to bring to the table. So this section is really all about levelling the bubbles, so to speak. So we've got a variety of different commissioning sources, as you know, it's very different to the UK, and different components coming together to form any one class. And it's important to have a baseline or to baseline their understanding, bring them together, and then test that in a field setting, which is FTX1, which is the end of Platoon Leader Foundations. So FTX has been redesigned. We move away from static locations and main operating base type operations that we used to do in Iraq and Afghanistan in enduring campaigns, and move towards hasty patrol base operations where students choose, recon, and deploy into a rural patrol base, establish security, including the digging in of foxholes and fighting positions, which is essential nowadays. Students then utilize a 5-paragraph format, formulate concise and clear orders to their platoons, utilize model pits that they've created in the ground, not pre-positioned ones in pre-positioned buildings, and conduct advanced contacts, reconnaissance, raids, and culminate in a platoon attack on an urban environment. So this blend of rural and urban settings overlaid with a modern threat picture, which includes UAVs in recon and attack modes, electromagnetic surveillance considerations, and air and artillery threats, ensures and students are planning and executing with modern threats in mind. We then move into stability and DISC operations module. Here, what we've done, we've blended together key aspects of general engineering, geospatial, support, assured mobility, and reconnaissance to set a foundational knowledge base for the lieutenants of how engineers support the force in this environment. So this step is step 1 of the spiral learning methodology in action, so to speak, where they are first visiting topics and concepts to understand their basic application before moving on to how to apply those in more complex environments. So this builds from geospatial to recon, so understanding what geospatial assets they have, recon to task site recon, to combat roads and airfields, to equipment production rates before kind of merging these together in project management. So we ensure they understand the basics of things like equipment rate production and then they have the practical application of those concepts so they can bring them to bear also later in later elements of the course. They conduct practical exercises, like visits to motor pools, so they can see that equipment in real life and get really good early look at the reality of using that equipment. So we're looking to get rid of a lot of the summative tests that I spoke about previously as well at the end of each week, and replace them with formative quizzes to check learning, and then move away from kind of stovepipe learning here and focus on the why. So bringing in real life examples from current conflicts and highlighting where the knowledge can be applied. So again, that strong foundational base for the rest of the course to be built on. Students then move into demolitions, which is a week, mainly unchanged due to funding and safety requirements, but still providing essential information they will need to refer to in the defence and offence modules. And once in defence and offence, although they'll be learning new concepts there, they will also be cross-referencing the lessons learned in stability, in DISCA and demo to enhance their understanding of mobility and counter-mobility support to combat operations, something that just hasn't been done or happening currently. Instructors will be empowered to bring students or to bring in elements of horizontal and vertical construction into that module to ensure that the students are revisiting those concepts and applying them where necessary in that more complex setting. So it encourages lieutenants to think about the so what's of supporting operations when conducting tasks such as engagement area development or gap crossing or breaching operations. And that approach should directly impact their lethality. So if you think lieutenants are constantly reinforcing and applying knowledge, it moves beyond their short-term memory. We're looking at developing a deeper, more intuitive understanding of these processes, which hopefully means faster, more effective decision-making under pressure and a greater ability to adapt to unforeseen circumstances. We're trying to build cognitive agility here. That's in direct contrast to the kind of learn, test, dump method that we may have seen more recently, and we're looking to dismantle that culture. We just want our lieutenants to retain that information, not because they need to pass an exam, but they need to understand its relevance. And that's what Spiral Method kind of encourages, that deeper understanding. And then finally, they will conduct FTX2, where we'll bring together all elements of the course in a culminating exercise. And this will aim to replicate a deployment into combat, so including RSOI, an ambition for air assault, a myriad of engineering tasks, including breaches, engagement area development, bridge recon, route denial, integrated with general engineering considerations and planning, all within a LISCO environment where they're moving patrol bases daily. So it's quite a challenging and far-reaching ambition, but I think it's exactly where we need to be aiming for. A real culminating event with extended opportunities for leadership to demonstrate the skills they've learned throughout the course. So that's the kind of ambition that I've outlaid there for financial year 26 for BOLC. Happy to take questions either now or at the end of the presentations, but I'll hand back over to yourself, sir, or Major Peter Witcomb.
Sir, you're muted, sir.
Thanks. It doesn't happen very often. There is some adjustment to the content, but the big idea here is really now, instead of being disciplined blocks of instruction, now we are blending those in the context of an operation so that we can revisit them in the context of stability operations, offense and defense. Like you said, it's not a spec and dump. Now you still have to retain that because you're going to apply it now as we go through these various types of operations. So have I got that about right?
Yeah, that's correct, sir. Yeah, it's really about retention that we're trying to achieve here. I think traditionally we've always seen something where you've got a test at the end of the week. You kind of force feed students a lot of information, and they're intelligent individuals, right? We recruit intelligent people that can do that, but then they're focusing on the next thing, and the retention is not always there. So it's a kind of honest look at learning.
Right, and to be honest, the context of the skills is far more important if you want to teach them how to think. So and make them adaptable. So I'm comment. I don't know if this is your idea, but it's fantastic, because I'm sure that didn't come from some Brit. So anyway.
Sir, you give me too much credit. And our Brit and our Aussie understand adult learning and how to be effective educators, certainly more than I do. But frankly, my focus on this, my imprint on this change process, General Watson, has been to make sure that contemporary topics are incorporated in both the Engineer BOLC course and the ECCC. And the character of war has changed and is changing, which you alluded to, and things that when you grew up in the Army and when I grew up in the Army that are considerations, those considerations have changed. We're back focusing our attention on the sky and the threats that are airborne threats. We're concerned about things like the electromagnetic spectrum. What are we emitting? How are we being seen? If we're seen, we're going to be targeted. Unmanned systems, how to counter unmanned systems, how to employ our own unmanned systems. That changing character of war, that was my focus on bringing to this change. But the benefit of having these superb foreign officers is that they can actually deliver this in a better manner. Over.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Luke, really well done. Well, very well done. Any questions before we move now to Captain's Career Course? Any questions for Luke? Luke will be on for a while. We can come back to him with more questions later on. Okay, seeing none. Peter, over to you, sir.
Thanks, sir. And I'll just double check comms are good.
Yeah, good.
Perfect. Thanks, sir. So much the same way as Luke introduced, clearly we wore our uniforms so that people knew that we weren't lateral transfers or imposters. We're from a foreign country, but we come here having worked with the US before and having fair knowledge of the quality of officers that we see that we've supported before. So as mentioned in the chat, long line of Australians. I've had previous bosses who recommended this job to me, and I jumped at the opportunity when it presented. So I'm just going to give you an update on ECCC, give you a bit of a brief background to understand how we got to where we are now, what we're currently doing following the CTSSB that Luke mentioned, and then the sort of future direction that we're looking to take the course. Slide, thanks. Thank you. So just for an update on the background, Luke mentioned about that 2018 CTSSB. That was the last time we had our task list defined. That was the first sort of indication of a change from global war on terror to large-scale combat operations. So there was a marked shift there in the critical tasks. There was some very patrol-based heavy tasks removed and a lot of focus back on that fight at the brigade and division level. Another big change that impacted the course was the introduction of distributed learning over the period of 22-23. The purpose of that was to modernise the captain's career course. It took away a bunch of time that was committed to Common Core, gave that back to the branch for specific training, and then allowed the branch to develop the training program to incorporate another 167 hours of training. That's important because, as you'll see, that there still is an impact flowing on from that decision. In March 2023, we had our critical task list replaced by competency. So we focused more on, rather than achieving individual critical tasks, how can we holistically develop the officer so that they're achieving the competencies we expect an officer to do? So that was then grouping those tasks under competencies so that we could focus on the training in the right area. The last thing to think about that shaped what the course looks like currently is that in the middle of last year, distributed learning discontinued effective immediately. That impacted only our active component because it's still utilised for our reserve component. But that 167 hours that we reallocated for branch-specific training, we then need to steal back 75 hours of that to introduce the Common Core product back into the training program, which is why you'll see in the next slide is where we end up now. So this is the current course map for Captain's Career Course. You can see that those topics there that are in white, those are the Common Core lessons that we had to reintroduce after the removal of distributed learning. So now, where we'd allocated more time to certain topics, we had to remove some of that time to be able to teach this inside the 23-week program. That 23-week program, it's for Army, all compos. Sorry, wrong. It is for all compos, but a focus on the active component. We have Marines, we have branch transfers, and we have international military officers as well attending this course. The focus for us here is developing engineer company commanders and engineer officers who can serve on battalion and above staff. For us, we've got numerous modules as well. So we step through a modular program, but those spiral learning methods continue. So we don't just sort of teach one thing and forget about it and move on. We do conduct critical event assessments in key locations, and that's to test that the trainee understands the science of the tactic. And then as we get later on in the course and we're starting to do more and more MDMP, that's where we're starting to see the art of the tactic come through. How have they understood that process? Do they know how to apply those skill sets in a staff, at a brigade level, at a battalion level, and within a divisional construct? So we see that constantly continuing to build up. For us, yeah, so 4 critical events that we look at to test those science. That's our general engineering exam, our offensive exam, our defensive exam, and our op board. So the things we're looking at there is, can we apply the general engineering principles? Do we understand how to conduct offensive operations from company through to brigade level? Same with defense. And can we utilize troop leading procedures to develop a company level op board that is executable by the subordinates? For our reserve component, we're pretty unique where we utilize the same critical events from the active course to the reserve course. So the assessments are the same. It's just the time in repetition is reduced. So that reserve component still conducts those same assessments. Hence why we can say the standard of a Compo 2 or Compo 3 officer is still quite high, because that allows us to say, well, you've met the same standard as what we expect a active component officer to meet. The difference is the time of repetition. So where this course, an active component will conduct 4, if not 5 repetitions of the MDMP, the reserve component may only get 1 or 2 reps of that through. So the experience level is less. They understand the concepts. They just need more time to practice and embed that knowledge. Next slide, please. Okay, so noting the history and where the course currently stands, that these are the outcomes from the CTSSB from the start of this year. So early January, while I was somewhat stuck in a snowstorm in Dallas of all places, the CTSSB sat, and these were the competencies that were provided for us to work with. You can see down there in the bottom red box, a bunch of tasks removed, a bunch of tasks revised, and some new tasks added. You can also see in the terminology in some of those competencies where the focus is. So when we look at planning offensive and defensive operations, we're looking for the company to BCT level. When we're looking at leadership challenges, we're looking at how do we do that in a large-scale combat operation. When we're conducting MDMP, again, we're looking at that division level fight. So how do we support as engineers within the division fight and understanding the roles from the company through to the division. It's pretty broad, I won't lie. Those competencies, you don't sort of see the tasks that sit underneath them just here, but there's a deliberate scaffolding effect. So we understand what the competency is. What tasks do you have to know to be able to achieve that competency? What lessons do we have to teach to ensure you can conduct those tasks? And that's how we're structuring the training at the moment. Next slide. So this is the ADDI process that Luke talked about. We sort of tried to deconflict so we didn't double tap each other here. In that big red box in the top left corner of the slide is the analysis process. So you can see that we've identified that there's changes to the operating environment. We've identified the job needs. The tasks have been analysed. An individual critical task list is approved. And now the training design team is looking at that individual task analysis. So we're going into each task and we're determining, how do I doctrinally conduct this task? Is this task specific for engineers? Is this actually a standalone task, or is it a sub-step of another task that already exists? So a lot of work in reading doctrine, a lot of consolidating processes to understand, how do I do certain tasks to be competent in certain areas to support engineer operations in large-scale combat operations. So we're currently working on that. A couple of days have passed since I put that pie chart in, so we've actually ticked off a few more that we've completed. But as we hit the end of that, that's the point in time where we'll look to back brief through the chain of command and provide our feedback of, we've analysed these tasks. Some of them may not be relevant. Some of them may be sub-steps. The competencies may need combinations. So there's already a few in there that I've looked at where it's like, we're planning a gap crossing, which is actually an offensive operation. So that should be the same competency. So how are those tasks then align? For us, with regards to the design, develop, implement, and evaluate, we've got a little bit of a aspirational timeline at the moment. We're looking to design the new course through April, so that when we hit Regiment Week, we're looking at having an idea about how we're going to structure that course, what lessons are going to be conducted, what assessments are we conducting to ensure the knowledge is correct. One of the things we want to look to introduce here as well is what standard do we want the either first lieutenant or captain coming to the course at? So should we have an expectation of having conducted a certain iterations of training, utilize the TLPs at the platoon level, et cetera, et cetera. We also then want to stipulate what is the end state. So what is the graduate of an ECCC course? What do they look like? They're competent in undertaking MDMP in support of division level operations. They are able to utilize TLP to develop company level orders. We want to frame that statement so that we can sort of do an ends, ways, means review and then design the course to match that. Through May, that's when we're looking at introducing the instructors who are cycling out of their current course. Prior to them PCSing for ILE, we want to steal all their knowledge and have them help develop the new lessons, the new assessments, the new content from the experiences they've had as instructors, impart those into lesson plans, impart those into assessments so that the future iterations of ECCC are getting the best possible product for that course that they can receive. Implementation phase moves in. We're looking at targeting our last course in this fiscal year, so session 425, to implement a trial of the new course that we've designed and developed. That'll then flow through to the reserve component phases 1 and 3 that we see in October and December, which allows us then to have had a session where we've tested the course, tested the assessment criteria, tested the methods of instruction, and assessed what our design looks like to be able to then generate that evaluation piece, which is a trial report. It allows us time to improve and fix the things we found from our trial that weren't quite right. And then what we want to be able to do is by fiscal year 27, introduce a new fully developed course that hits the critical marks from the CTSSB, aligns to the current threat picture and aligns with the best teaching techniques, so that then when we do hit the next iteration of a CTSSB, the course design is pretty good. What we're then doing is adjusting the tasks for any operational adjustments that we may see. That's really where we're at with the course design piece. Luke and I are talking daily. What we want to see is that clear connection between a BOLC, the release point from a BOLC to the experiential learning they have in an operational unit, to then return back to the schoolhouse and bridge the gap into the next level of command that they face. And so I'll hand back over to yourself and happy to take any questions now or later or after Shawn's brief as well.
Just a quick comment. For the group that has, thinks that this is a very bureaucratic system, you have no idea. And it is by its nature, you have to do the analysis. And so, Peter, my hat's off to you for, it sounds like it's just mundane work to be able to do the analysis, but you have to do it. Because if you do this willy-nilly, without any, good rigorous analysis of what it is we're trying to produce, what are the tasks, what is the field saying, you will get a bad product. And so my hat's off to you that you guys have really put in the time on the front end of this, and it will pay off, I think, huge dividends as you go through pilot courses and then transition to new course. So really, really well done. A question for you and for Luke, if you might. The question was asked, the instructors that you're getting, are you getting the right talent in terms of instructors, both in the basic course and in the captain's career course, particularly in the SDIs? And Luke, I'll turn it over to you first.
Yeah, thanks very much, sir. Yeah, so interesting. When I first came in, we had all of our instructors here, and I was told the next marketplace was about to be opening up, but it was going to be a selection process that differed from previous times. So how we normally would do it, I was told we'd kind of recruit out with ECCC being right next door, give the options out there to them. And then people that would want to put BOLC down as an option would come and then be interviewed by us. We'd have a look at those people and kind of handpick the ones we thought were best suited to the job. That would then kind of get passed back up the chain, and would have a good idea of where those people were coming from and their backgrounds and where we could slot them in. Unfortunately, it seemed as though that went away for an iteration. So I'm expecting about 10 new instructors and platoon trainers coming through in the next kind of four months or so, who I've never interviewed before. So they are coming to me kind of fresh out of nowhere. So we're having to do that process, kind of backtracking through an interview now and find them whether they're suitable. So like Big Army took that responsibility to make the call on them. I think we are swapping back to the original process of doing the interviews and recruiting our own people, which I think is an awesome way of doing it. It's something the British Army doesn't do. We're just APC, which is Army Personnel Centre, kind of just distributes it based on their application forms, apart from maybe MAs to generals. But yeah, us having control of our own recruitment, which is what it's going back to, is a fantastic opportunity. And we do get some really, really talented individuals that want to come here as a result of that.
Yeah. Pete, how about you?
So much the same. I think the two key factors we want to look at is the people that are coming to be instructors need to have a breadth of experience. So we can't draw all of our instructors from one pocket of the Army. We need to try and draw experience from a multitude of forces. I think if we're solely relying on people who have been in TRADOC for too long, we might lose a little bit of experience from the broader force, but you need a bit of crossover from both. So those who have been in company command in the training environment, those who've been in the forces command environment, maybe even if there's those, having Marines as on the instructional staff as well is also beneficial because it provides a different perspective. As long as people are driven to teach, I think you can shape and mentor and develop them. They need to have that motivation. The skill is there. It's about motivation and experience. Australia is much the same as what Luke said. When I was an instructor, I fought tooth and nail to get to the Royal Military College to be an instructor. But the school doesn't pick who comes. The branch managers, the talent managers, they pick who goes to those locations, and we're reliant on them. So having the opportunity at times to pick our staff is good. I'm happy for people to come and instruct as long as they're driven to instruct and willing to develop, take feedback on board if they're not quite hitting the mark as well.
Yeah, so Peter, both for you and then Cameron, I'll turn it over to you. For me personally, I think the most important thing you can do is go to your school and be an instructor. And for the lieutenant colonels, the battalion commanders that are out there, the sergeant majors that are out there, I kind of differ with what Luke and Peter have said. You're the ones, you battalion commanders, majors, sergeant majors, you're the ones that select who goes to the school by how you influence them. If you got a hot rock, young leader out there, why wouldn't you want them bringing up the next generation? And, for me personally, having spent time as an instructor at the engineer school, it is probably one of my most rewarding assignments. Commandant, over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a great question, great topic, right? What I've been saying to folks as I go around and talk to the field is, our product, our students are really only as good as the instructors that we have, right? Those folks that are interacting with, in this case, our lieutenants and captains, have such influence on the quality of the officer that, in this case, that comes out to the field, right? So we need investment from the field. So I'm going to go ahead and use my prerogative, sir, and stress out some leaders on this line here. I want to hear Lieutenant Colonel David Cox and or Lieutenant Colonel Randy Summerhill, who are involved in recruiting and selecting our SGLs. I have a role too, sir, right? And I talk to our brigade commanders and our battalion commanders and tell them, for instance, this fall will be a crucial time to recruit for summer of 26 hires to be our SGLs. We need the key men and women that those commanders say would be are well suited based on their knowledge, skills, and behaviors to be instructors. So that's my side of things. But on the receiving end of things, it's down to Colonel Cox and Colonel Summerhill. So, gentlemen, you're next.
Hey, sir, Colonel Summerhill, thanks for that. I would absolutely say that when you came in and you reached out to the brigade commanders and to the force and said that we needed the best and the brightest to come be instructors at the career course, I think the feedback that we got from the force and some of the just awesome interviews that we had for especially for the instructors coming in for the career course was absolutely phenomenal. I think Luke hit it exactly right with BOLC. We did not have the two-sided market. It was the one-sided market. So we did not get as much option for this crop that's coming in this summer of instructors for BOLC. Absolutely think that we can work with them and we will get them fit into the program appropriately. But absolutely, sir, the impact that the instructors have on the future of the regiment with these future leaders, it just can't be undersold as truly. I still remember my small group instructor when I was in the career course. He's at the schoolhouse now with Colonel JD Scott. So I mean, the people who are instructing are absolutely going to have an impact on the rest of the careers for these officers.
Sir, I'll echo what Randy said, and we get the right instructors labeled in for BOLC and Captain's Career Course. Those are also the individuals that make up the command queue for the companies that make up First Engineer Brigade here at Fort Leonard Wood. So making sure we find the right mix of talent without sucking up all the talent from across the entire Army to fill out our positions is one of those things that we have to layer into our pitch. As we're going out and engaging with folks, it's been really kind of a hot topic to say, hey, battalion commanders, you're getting ready to go into command. You're in command now. Send us your best and brightest, those who want to make a difference in the future of our regiment, because this is the place that you can make that tangible difference. And what we're seeing is a good return on that by folks coming back. They want to make a difference. The instructors that come in are very, very talented. And even if they don't end up taking command here in First Engineer Brigade, we have been getting some really, really phenomenal folks who have come in, and probably some of our top instructors are folks that are driven to teach, but ultimately want to depart from the Army after their time as an instructor. The biggest thing we can do is ask, send us your best and brightest and those who want to make a difference. Over.
Yeah, David, I appreciate that. And I do want to keep the discussion going. John Barger from Kentucky National Guard, I know you guys are seeing the same thing. Just can you quickly give us a Compo 2 perspective on, getting the right talent in our institutional training?
Sir, good evening. Great discussion. So I'm the commander of the 238th RTI, which we have two battalions. One is OCS WOCS, which has a cadre element, which we must recruit against. And then we have the first of the 238th, which is 13 series MOSs from 13 Fox, Mike, and Juliet artillery battalions. Same problem, except a smaller talent pool. However, we are able to recruit our NCOs from multiple states. It's a little different situation, but the cadre represent our center of gravity. You have to have, there are limited opportunities for Compo 2 or anyone like artillery, for example. Just recently, we had the 138th Artillery was in Syria. They performed the national response to the attack in January last year, Tower 19. So, but we had NCOs came back from deployment. They're looking to perform their PME, but also go to the schoolhouse and just get time to relay their experience, but also get back to the basics at the same time. And again, you gentlemen hit the nail on the head. It takes a right mix of an officer or NCO that is going to be able to connect with the students and relay that knowledge, but also be comfortable to step away from their community for a period of time before they return and be reinserted into the line. And sir, from my perspective, we in Kentucky are blessed. We have a command emphasis upon the rotation of that leadership, and it's going to take the same within Compo 1 to say you're going to need to go and build go back to the schoolhouse and build our force. Over.
John, I agree that, the old adage about, well, I got to stay in operational units. Well, the health of operational units depends on having talent in the institutional side. So it's just I know it's a problem across all compos. I do want to get to Major Shawn, are you on? I didn't see you earlier. Okay, yeah. So
yes, sir, I'm on.
He's the Brigade S3 for our mighty First Engineer Brigade. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the training environment itself that is changing at Fort Leonard Wood. All as an effort to try and get it more modernized, more replicate of current environment. So Shawn, over to you, sir.
All right, sir. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Again, Major Shawn Dorman, S3 for First Engineer Brigade. And if you can go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is kind of an overview of what I plan on talking about tonight. So 2 different efforts within First Engineer Brigade. First, as Major Clayton and Major Witcomb both spoke about, engagement area development and transition of the course, providing an engagement area development range, 27 Alpha, to show our engineer officers, our sappers, and eventually into the NCO Academy what an engagement area looks like. Coming up through PME, my exposure to engagement area development was on paper and pictures, and using the engineer planning factors and tools to develop that out. But outside of CTC rotation, seeing engagement area being developed, it was something foreign to me, and understanding the scale and complexity of what it takes to place an engagement area. And then second, we are bound by POI, but we're moving faster than POI here, and we'll let POI catch up. But technology integration into our initial entry training, functional courses, and professional military education. So we're talking there, our man transportable robotic systems, increment 2 mitters, which will be fielded in the next 2 weeks to help resource our training in OSIT, BOLC, and SAPR, looking for creative ways to how do we integrate those into large scale combat operations. And the same with the small multi-purpose equipment transport, seeing those again across the formation for our courses here and how we implement those. And then finally, both on the enemy side and the friendly side, integration of SUAS into training, building those fundamental battle drills of reacting to UAS, taking lessons learned from foreign conflicts, incorporating that at a relevant pace to our institutional training, and then getting after building those core competencies for our soldiers and officers while they come through First Engineer Brigade and then head back out to the force. Any questions, I'll head over to the next slide. So this is range 27 Alpha. This is our engagement area development range. So for those that are familiar with Fort Leonard Wood or coming to Fort Leonard Wood in a few weeks for Regimental Week, as you go down Fort Leonard 1, it's the main range road on Fort Leonard Wood. It's south past Bloodland Lake and just north of range 24. If you hit range 24, you've gone too far. If you end up at the south gate, you've gone way too far. So you'll need to turn around and head back up. But we picked range 27 Alpha as we've gone through this based on how the terrain sits, the gradient of the terrain, and then being able to build those engagement areas in, putting those those battle positions in, and then being able to see the terrain, shape the terrain to really move the enemy to where we want to kill them. All right. And so the background for 27 Alpha, as we've transitioned to Coin to LSCO, as we transition from Coin to LSCO, being able to bring those lessons learned from the CTCs into this environment. And this range has transitioned from what was originally a petting zoo, where a vehicle fighting position would be in one place and a tank ditch would be somewhere else, to something that is encompassing of a platoon level engagement area. So it's not full out to a full max effective range of weapon systems. We are limited by land, so it's at 1/3 scale. But again, it's an area where we've taken lessons learned from foreign conflicts. We've used Dragon's Teeth as one of them that you can see at the top right of the screen, that we've placed there as obstacles to one, be able to use on the attack and figure out how we get past these obstacles and how we breach these obstacles on the attack. And then again, on the defense, how do we build what we call tetrahedrons in the old 5-34 and put those into the defense to move the enemy. So the purpose up top there is to provide ECCC, BOLC, SAPR, and OSIT, as well as the NCOA, the ability to understand the scope and complexity of engagement area development and the opportunity to develop an engagement area with additional obstacles in order to shape terrain. So across the bottom, the southern portion of the range, we've built in 4 vehicle fighting positions, different types, hull defilade, 2-tier, and turret defilade positions to provide exposure to multiple types of fighting positions. We've in place, as you move further north in the engagement area, anti-tank ditch. We've in place side hill cuts based on the terrain there, and just a different way to get after slowing and stopping the enemy, but achieving the same effect. So utilizing the terrain, picking the right type of anti-tank ditch to in place. And then as we move further north, we have those dragon teeth, which are surface laid, and then a NATO standard lane marker, which is currently being developed or being built and procured to in place there. The next fight's not going to be U.S. alone. It's going to be a multi coalition fight, and to be on the same sheet of music on what the standard is, to identify our lanes and allow safe passage as we do rear passage of the line and bring the enemy in. Now, other things that we're going to do to further define this engagement area is to provide students with a menu of other situational obstacles they can place. So we'll have, within a container out at range 27 Alpha, we'll have the ability to in place wire obstacles, whether that's 11 row, triple strand, and a myriad of other wire obstacles, a Savo and continue to shape that terrain, and then log obstacles to further allow our students to experiment and experience different ways to shape the enemy and shape terrain and move the enemy. So 27 Alpha has not been without its struggles. All right, so one thing that's different about 27 Alpha and building an engagement area here than would be in large scale combat operations is we're building a semi-permanent range. So that range is going to sit out there. It takes the weather. There's erosion. There's rain. Those fighting positions become pools, and we have to figure out somewhere for the water to go. So we fought with and different from large scale combat operations. As we go into the defense, the focus of the defense is to quickly transition back to the offense, to get back to an offensive maneuver. Right here, we've built a long lasting range, so we've had to figure out how do we move the water. So we've had some creative engineers within 554 Engineer Battalion that have created French drains and to move the water to those where you see on the map those red net waterways to drain the water to those locations. And continue to also go through our environmental considerations that we've had to do with silt fences and other different requirements out there. But we see this range already in use with BOLC as they've gone out there and done engagement area development. We'll highlight this range soon during Engineer Week through various competitions. And we're really excited to see where this range goes. It's come a long way. We're building in mortar parapets. As you can see towards the south, right, the importance of protection and digging in our fires assets, as we've learned from conflicts overseas, to make sure we're building a synchronized engagement area that incorporates fires, that incorporates overlapping fields of fire, and then properly integrates obstacles into terrain to canalize the enemy and kill him. Pending any questions on 27 Alpha?
No, go ahead, Shawn, go ahead.
All right, so moving on to some of the technology integration that we're looking at. So the two on the top I briefly spoke about in the introduction. So the mitters and SMET. So we're fielding those soon. We're looking to experiment with those in our various training courses. So giving battalion commanders, company commanders, the freedom to experiment and use them how they see fit in large scale combat operations. Throughout my experience in my career, as I've gone through route clearance platoons, the mitters or previous iterations, the Talon, were primarily a route clearance tool that we use to identify and neutralize IEDs. Right, and as we transition to large scale combat operations, how do these systems remain relevant, and how do we use them to get sappers out of the breach? And then moving over to small multi-purpose equipment transport, the SMET, getting away from carton C-wire and pickets across an engagement area, being able to load these with pallets to have an 11 row or a triple strand and moving these quickly across engagement area to build our obstacles. And success with these two is as we have our lieutenants and we have our junior soldiers and our officers, our captains seeing this equipment out there, is when they return to their first unit of assignment, they start looking for these in their containers to integrate those into training. And then moving down to the bottom for the SUAS. So primarily first is getting those built into OSIC, specifically BCT during the Forge FTX. So creating that battle drill that no longer can you look left and right on the battlefield as you move through the woods or move terrain. There's a vertical threat now, which is loitering UAS. And so what is the basics that you need to do? So early on, exposure to our soldiers going through BCT to be able to identify that threat, seek cover concealment, and then report that. And then as we become more proficient through incorporating these into the Sapper Leader course or BOLC, we start doing active measures of neutralizing those threats and then continuing on with our mission. The SUAS is coming closer. It means this week we expect movement on SUAS fieldings late third quarter, early fourth quarter. But we've already started implementing those into training. Our OSIP battalions have been using audio noises right now to replicate the audio signature that a UAS may make, to start building that muscle memory and that exposure to our junior soldiers as they go through training. So pending any questions on what we're doing within First Engineer Brigade, I'll stop there and field questions.
Yeah, Shawn, first of all, really, the impact that you're going to have in bringing these key elements to from the battlefield now into training, really fantastic initiative on the part of the Engineer Brigade. So my thanks to you for doing that. And, I think, something that you ought to consider, First Engineer Brigade could help the field as you go through this. What are ways that you're integrating it into the training environment that we can also do at home station down in units? I think there's some lessons learned there that would be really amazing for you to be able to share. We had Captain Flora had a question. Shawn, just real quick, I want to get back to Captain Flora's question. And, it's the idea that most of our teaching on LISCO remains kind of focused on the 12B, the 12 November maneuver enablers. And Captain Flora, make sure I've got this right. Where are we going to do vertical specific beyond just stability operations, but how are we integrating those into both offense, defense, and stability operations? And I don't know, Luke, if you or Peter could take that on.
So I can talk a little bit towards what we're doing on CCC. So one of the two of the tasks that came out of the critical task site selection board were how do we apply vertical construction in LISCO, and how do we apply horizontal construction within the LISCO environment. On our review of those two tasks, we sort of identified that planning for those is what we need at the captain level. So we're introducing developing the task of how do you plan, or at least prepare for vertical and horizontal construction in that environment. So what are the things we're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. The other part of that I'd say that is another key one that we saw, or actually two, was designing expedient roadways and designing expedient airfields. So those are two key tasks we have in one of our competencies for general engineering within a LISCO environment. So everything that we've been doing in CCC world, we've been looking at it through the large-scale combat operations lens. If we're planning vertical or horizontal constructions, how are we doing it in that environment? So we're not looking about how do we do it in a in a counterinsurgency operation. It's like, how do we plan for it in a large-scale combat operation? And history has proven that this is a critical skill that needs to be carried through. So at the captain level, we're teaching them how to plan and how to identify those tasks where they may appear.
Yeah, and Luke, how about you as you think about this spiraling within the basic course?
Yeah, brilliant. So we were really looking at trying to ensure the lieutenants understand where their soldiers are likely to be employed and what tasks they're going to be asked to do. So we were kind of through that stability, and then the offense and defense is understanding where those key skills that they bring to the table are likely to be employed. So within a large scale combat operation, understanding the laydown of how like a division or a brigade is laid out, and where those the divisional support area or the brigade support area will need the support of those type of engineers to ensure that they can support the fight in the in the close battle. So if they're operating in the rear, it's still enabling that large scale combat operation, and it's understanding where in that geographic laydown they will be needed, and what type of task they could be asked to do. So that kind of string between stability ops up into offensive and back to defensive, like where are they going to be utilizing those core skills? So that's where we're trying to let the lieutenants understand where they're going to employ their people. And I think especially in the current fight in Ukraine, if you're looking at the Ukrainians and Russians are occupying buildings of opportunity in the urban environment as well. So your kind of 12 Romeos, 12 whiskies are going to be needed in those areas, both in the urban and in the rural. So I don't think there's a lack of opportunity for them to be employed. I think they're going to be utilizing that skill throughout the area of operations, just in a much more a nuanced way than we've seen in counterinsurgency operations.
Yeah, Luke, great answer. So look, for the commanders, captain's career course, basic course, your babies. Okay, yes, the commandant owns them and you've got, course leads, but commanders, you got to exercise your voice. At the end of the day, the job of the engineer school is to produce the leaders that the regiment needs, and the way that the regiment understands what it needs is by feedback from the commanders and command sergeant majors. So I just ask that you would help get the word out that the changes are being made, that this will be, it is being recorded, it'll be hung on the website. Good thing for folks to think about as an LPD down inside units across all compos. My thanks to Luke and to Peter and to Shawn. You guys have just you just showed us what kind of heart this regiment has, and particularly our allies. As I wrote earlier, my experience has been we always get the absolute best of our exchange officers, and I have no problem with you leading the way of both our captains and our lieutenants in their leader development. My commandant, sir, I'll give you the last word and then we'll sign off.
Hey, sir, thanks again for your leadership. It still has impact, and it's really appreciated, certainly by me, and for your efforts here to sponsor this professional discussion. And so my hat's off to you, sir. That is all. Thank you.
All right. Well, look, Commandant, the last thing I might ask is maybe we can think about a response from the school, looking at the NCOs and what's going on in ALC and SLC and how we're shaping that. I think that would be of interest to the field as well.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
All right. Hey, thanks. Well, listen, everybody, I hope you have a great night. Don't forget Regimental Week is coming up. Hope I get to see folks there. I know the Commandant and the Schoolhouse have got a great Regimental Week planned, and AEA is looking forward to support as we begin to celebrate our 250th birthday. All right. Lead to serve.